All right, and we are back, ladies and gentlemen, and we are ready to go ahead and get into this game deciding blind round. As a reminder for the people who have short term memory loss and thus can't remember what was said 20 seconds ago, the prompt was to give me an action film from the 2010s, as I said audibly. Very broad definition, just because, if something has action in it, it's an action film. Cool with me. It is what it is. The question is, what is the worst action film of the 2010s? We do have Looper on the board. We do have Expendables on the board. Will, you are up first with Looper, as you did answer first. I will go ahead and bring the timer back in for you, sir, and it will begin ticking when you speak. Guys, you both done an excellent job tonight to reach this point, so I do wish you the best of luck in this blind round. It will begin when you start speaking, Will.
Ryan Johnson does three things really well. He does comedy well, he does atmospheric well, and he does drama and suspense well. None of which are featured in Looper. Looper is a time travel movie that doesn't follow time travel rules. It is an action movie that barely has any action in it. So if you're looking for a film where people are talking about, time travel and what it's like to time travel, I mean, if you need that, then safety is not guaranteed is just out there too. But with Looper, you expected big action with Bruce Willis in there, and he's relegated to a verbal chess partner, and that's just not fun for anybody.
And time. All right, we go back over to Tyler. 1 minute on the clock for you.
All right, so The Expendables is a high octane film filled to the brim with actors who don't really belong in the landscape of the world of the acting today. It's Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Dolph Lundgren, all these people that were really big in the 80s, 90s, coming together to kind of say, hey, all this stuff that you thought was cool then, it's cool now still, right? It's cool beating up people and doing all kinds of really really high octane stuff and naming our characters yin yang and all that stuff. That's still cool, right? It's not cool. It makes for a pretty bad film when you watch it and you feel like you've seen something that isn't how we as a society reflects today. Um, and so it doesn't really have much place in today's world. In the 80s it was cool, but today it just kind of makes you cringe.
And time. All right, Will, back over to you, sir. 2 minutes on the clock.
If you're going to say something is the worst action film of the 2010s, immediately throwing out the phrase high octane is probably not the best way to go about your argument. Second of all, if you're seeing Expendables for the plot, what are you also doing? Watching porn for the plot? No, you're not. You're watching action for very specific things. You're watching action for explosions, for fights, and often you're watching it for the people he mentioned: Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and then who else do you have in there? You have Wesley Snipes. You have Dolph Lundgren. These are the pinnacle of action stars. So of course they're going to be in the Expendables, and of course they're going to be in this film. Oh, well, the film was poorly written. Guess who wrote it? Sylvester Stallone. So is this the best action film of 2020, the 2010s? Of course not. But it's far from the worst. Looper, on the other hand, claims it's an action film. It claims it's an action film. And it's just talking most of the time. Yeah, there's a couple set pieces here and there where there's some action, including the end. But the big climactic scene that we're all waiting for, what happens? It's over in 5 minutes. The entire film, for the entire almost 2 hour runtime, if not over 2 hour runtime, is over in the blink of an eye. It does Bruce Willis, one of the just absolute pinnacles of action, it does him dirty. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's action career was killed. Was just pretty much killed right on soon as this film came out. There's nothing, there's some interesting concepts, there's some interesting dialogue, but but to call this an action film is a complete slight against action films. It is a slap in the face to action films. At least Expendables was exactly what you signed up for. Action, high octane, and a lot of fun.
Time. All right. So just a couple, because I can do this off the top of my head, just a couple quick fact check. All the cast members named so far for the first Expendables film have been accurate, except for Wesley Snipes. He was only a part of the third film. But with that said, everyone else has been pretty accurate so far. Tyler, back over to you for 1 minute or 2 minutes on the clock.
It's worst is always going to come down to what that person thinks the worst is. You can say it's a lack of action. You could say it's a movie that shows that a movie of actors who don't really fit into, they still bring the action, but when you watch it, you're like, what is this doing to me as a person? And for me, that's why The Expendables is worse, is because when I watch it, I see a lot of the actions, I see a lot of the behavior that I don't feel like should be heralded as this is the way that someone's supposed to be anymore. It just doesn't have a place in a world where we're trying not to do things like reduce Asian characters into naming them yin yang and then having them just pretty much be characters of what an Asian person is. And he's really good at martial arts, doing things like that. Things like that, like having the Russian guy be the bad guy. Things like that. It's stuff that it worked at the time, but it doesn't work now. And we can try to ignore that as much as we want. But at the end of the day, that always sticks out to me more than the action does. It sticks out to me more as like, is this something that I should be watching? Is this something that's shaping me currently? And is this something I want to continue to let shaping me? With Looper, it raises a lot of really interesting points about, hey, when it comes down to it, are you willing to do the job, or are you going to try to save yourself? He has to essentially, I don't like saying it, but like he essentially has to kill himself. He has to kill his older self, and his older self has a plan of his own and leads to this big cat and mouse game. And it's like he has to decide: am I going to kill myself so that way I can live today, or am I going to let myself live so that way I can live for the better in the future? And I think that's a really interesting question that's couched in this.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open discussion. The timer will start when the first competitor speaks.
Yeah, it's a cat and mouse game. It's a cat and mouse game that's done through 90% dialogue and almost no action. It's like a cat and mouse game is supposed to be suspenseful, and there's no suspense here. So that's a problem. And if you want to talk about, oh, well, I don't like Asian stereotypes, look what they do in Looper. There's tons of Asian stereotypes. There's tons of all sorts of other stereotypes in there. It's pretty bad when it comes to stereotyping Asian people. So if that's what you're basing your argument with why Expendables is bad, well, my film does it, but at least with Expendables, you're still getting what you signed up for. You're still getting an action film. You're still getting action stars, whether or not they are good actors, whether or not they're stereotypes of different things. Okay. That's not the discussion we're talking about. We're talking about the film overall, and calling it the worst action film when you're still getting all the points of an action film, that's hard to argue.
You say that about the Asian stereotypes, caricatures of Looper, but that I don't recall seeing that in Looper. So I don't know if that's
is what or
not.
There's an entire plot with the Asian mob.
Okay. Then maybe so. I don't know. I can't speak to that, but I remember there being a lot more action set pieces than you you've been saying, with the whole subplot of telekinesis and having powers, um, the whole, I mean, there's
which is
always
used
fight.
once.
There's always fight. He's fighting for his life throughout that entire movie. I mean, he has to fight against his older self as well as his employers because they.
There's two, but there's only there's only two sequences, and one of those set pieces and one of those things are actually blended in one sequence where he's fighting against where he's fighting against his older self and he's fighting against his employers. That's all one set piece. So really, there's only three big action sequences. All of them are done in the blink of an eye. Whereas at least with the Expendables, you have multiple big action sequences, all of them lasting a lot longer than the 1 to 2 minutes you get in Looper. And so therefore the action in Expendables is far more satisfying than it is in Looper. Looper is nothing but dialogue and some little tricks, levitating coins and stuff like that. That's all you get. You hardly get any action, and it's not thrilling at all.
Sorry, trying to pull some stuff. Yeah, I mean, Looper may be a little bit smarter. It doesn't have to distract you with the giant set pieces. It doesn't have to distract you with the giant explosions. It's not, but I mean, you're going there for a different kind of action film, and I think that that film. I mean, it raises a lot more questions. It makes you think a little bit more. It doesn't solely hinge on the fact like there's going to be explosions. It's not a Michael Bay film where there's just going to be a lot of things going on. It's going to get your adrenaline pumping, and then by the movie's just going to end.
The entire time I'm watching Looper, I'm just constantly wondering the same question over and over again. When's this film going to end? I've given this film 2 or 3 watches, and I just can't watch this film. It is so boring. And this is not even Rian Johnson at peak Rian Johnson. If you want peak Rian Johnson, you can at least look at Last Jedi, or you can look at Knives Out. At least with Last Jedi, he actually knew how to do action. He learned his mistakes from Looper and knew how to do action better there. But all these, you're not, the only question you're asking is, well, what would you do in this situation? Well, it doesn't really matter because I'm not compelled by that question. At least with Expendables, it's just fun from start to finish.
And time. All right, we're going to get into the final closing round. There's 1 minute left for each of you. Will, you are up first. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
I have no problem with smart action films. I really don't. But when a film is trying to be far more intelligent, often it falls flat. And that's exactly what happens with Looper. All the questions it tries to ask, it doesn't even know how to answer it itself. And by the end, you just don't care. Even by the midpoint, you're not even wondering about the questions. You're just wondering, why is this happening? How are, it breaks the rules of time mechanics. So all the questions could be asking are irrelevant if you look at the time mechanics of it. The Expendables, yes. Is it a little bit, is it problematic calling a character yin yang? Sure. Is it also problematic having having concubines, Asian concubines, and having Asian torture techniques used in a mob setting? Yeah, that's problematic. But Looper has that, and at least with Expendables, it's done more jokingly. Looper, it's taken way too seriously.
All right, we are going to go to Tyler for the final minute of the match. Time starts when you begin speaking.
So clearly, I mean, when it comes down to it, it's going to come down to what you think worst is. Do you think worst is a movie that makes people kind of glorifies people acting in ways that maybe you don't agree with, or maybe you just don't feel like there's enough punches getting thrown? I think that's really what's going to come down to on this. I think that, I mean, with the Expendables, I think that it's just these characters just trying to do one last ride where they could do whatever they want. I mean, this is literally like Stallone bringing all his buddies in so that way they can kind of get one last hurrah before Hollywood doesn't let them do movies anymore because they don't really exemplify what we're looking for these days as opposed to the 80s. Looper, I think Looper has an interesting story. It has a interesting cat and mouse game. I think that people will they'll appreciate more for what it has than just the people that are in it.
And time. All right, guys, you have both played an excellent match, but it is now time for the final decision. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back and bring forth our judges. And John, I will go to you first. Who gets your final vote, and what was the main selling point?
I think all told, I got to go with Will, because really the way the Expendables is described is basically how it was promoted. And I think the negatives are the positives in the sense of it. So you go into it knowing you're seeing over-the-hill action stars. You're not let down, whereas Looper, if you buy Will's explanation, you go in thinking you're getting a hot action movie and you get more of a psychological cat and mouse game, and that's undersold. So I have to go with Will.
Okay. Noah, I go down to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main selling point?
To not even attempt to try to hide my hand, I'm going to try to create some suspense here since this is the last round in the match. I feel like there was a very clear hit on the nail, and one of the competitors stated that to be the worst action movie, there has to be no action or little to none. And because of that, my point goes to Will. He stated that there was a lot of action and exactly what you want from an action film in Expendables, and how there was little to none and not very well executed action scenes in his movie. So my point's going to Will.
All right, judges, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you guys to the back because your winner by a final score of 3-2, the virtuoso Will Cohen, pulling it out in the blind round. He lost one, then he took one back. Will, how are you feeling, man?
I feel like I just went through the emotional tennis match from hell. Which,
Welcome.
let Sam Raimi make that film. That's what I want to see Sam Raimi make, for fuck's sake. But I looked at those questions and and maybe my problem is maybe I was just too confident in these questions, especially like some of the earlier ones, because like I feel like every win that I got was like by the skin. Like I almost feel like it's by the skin of my teeth. But if I could just avoid the blind round, I feel like I'd be better. Especially facing the absolute stupidity of choosing one of my favorite action films from the 2010s and finding ways of talking shit about it. That's hard.
It is, and I have the pleasure of being able to put people in that position because it is really fun on this side. Yeah, but again, an absolute a good performance there, and a good final round to pull it out. It was a very tight match all the way through, to make sure that just back and forth between you guys was really, really well done. So my question to you is, right now you are at that 2-1 record going into the next round of matches, which will be happening in the summer when we kind of begin scheduling everybody back for the next match.
Right.
So at the moment, there is no immediate opponent, but now that you're back in the top half of that table, is there somebody who you'd kind of be interested in playing, or is it just to take what comes?
This is the one arena that I don't know who to call out, just because the people I know would be dumb for me to call out, for lack of a better term. But I don't know. Maybe I'm being too harsh on myself, because I said in my last match against Alan, I don't think my record really displays my ability, but at the same time, neither does my opponent, neither does Tyler for that matter. So if people are looking at Tyler's record right now going, oh, I bet I could beat him, study. Do more studying. That was part of my downfall, is I probably didn't study enough for this match. I'm definitely studying more for my next match.
All right. Well, we'll see how that plays out for you. We'll look forward to having you back, sir. Have a great night. We will see you next time as I take you out and bring in your opponent, Tyler, who put in an excellent performance tonight, man. And it is one of those unfortunate things, as I've said to multiple people. It's very tough because, at the end of the day, no matter how well you play, it all comes down to just, did you get the point or did you not? And then did you get enough to win? And unfortunately tonight it didn't go your way. But if I can speak from just as a person who's been there to watch all of your matches, I do think your performance has stepped up from the last time, as opinionated as that may seem. But how are you feeling after this?
I'm feeling okay. Trying to say that The Expendables is one of the worst action movies of a decade was a tall order, so I don't mind going out on that. But I mean, I feel good. I feel better about some of the questions than I do the others. So it was definitely, it definitely felt like it was a little bit more improved. I really I think it comes down to the opponent. Like, Will and I, we had a good back and forth for the most part, which I think really helped bring out my game. Because I felt like, the reason why I always hesitate to do things like debate is because I don't try to like force people to listen to my opinions. I don't go like, hey, I know you're talking, but like, hey. And so, that's always been kind of a struggle, but Will did a good job of kind of like leaving those spots open where I could hop in and be able to, refute what you said or throw in my own opinions, which I think, it really helped me kind of like get into my groove, which I really appreciated that. And I mean, every time I do anything, I always want to go against the best people, and Will was an excellent competitor, so I'm glad I got the chance to go against him.
Absolutely. And then obviously I'll ask you a similar sorts question, but right now there is nobody in your immediate future, but when it comes around for the next set of scheduling, is there somebody whom you might be interested in looking at playing, or is it just you'll take who's put in front of you and do your absolute best?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Just throw someone out there, and maybe it will work out. We'll see. But no, I mean, just anybody. I mean, getting to just debate about movies is a lot of fun. I don't really have anybody specifically that I'm gunning for. I just want to come out, talk about hopefully the best stuff, but unfortunately sometimes it turns out talking about the worst stuff. Also, one thing I did really resist doing, because I just didn't want to be that guy, and I didn't want to like it come down to that, but like during the blind part, I didn't want to be like, well, it seems like this may be the worst action movie, but Will talks a lot. He seemed to remember a lot about Looper, so is it really the worst if he remembers so much of it and I don't remember that much about The Expendables?
Hey, sometimes you got to take cheap shots, man, but I can respect somebody who is willing not to. Tyler, again, man, and a good performance despite the fact that it played out in a loss. But we do have a couple of competitors who are sitting around your record, so I'm sure it won't be hard to find you an opponent and see who you'll face off against next time. So thank you, man, and we will see you in the next time. And guys, that is the end of another movie Battleground match. Thank you guys for tuning in and watching, as always, because without people watching, people playing, people judging, I wouldn't have a reason to put nearly as much time as I put into this. So it makes it all worth it. Thank you to my judges who are here tonight, John Marr and Noah McCausland, for helping make the match go. Again, great performance from Tyler. Well done. Unfortunate that you couldn't come out with the victory, man, but that just is the game. Will, congratulations on the victory. And speaking of Will, in his most recent match, he played a man by the name of Dr. Spaceman, and you saw Will tonight. You will be seeing him at the weekend as he returns to take on Chadwick Webb, who is a 3-1 record. The winner of that matchup will get a number one contenders match in June. So it is a big one on Saturday. The winner of that match will put themselves right next to a title shot potentially. So check that one out. Tune back in, subscribe, rate the video, comment below, leave your suggestions, your comments, your opinions. And on behalf of myself and all my fellow producers, we'll see you next time on the Movie Battleground. Take care, everybody.